You wake up in the morning, go to the window, open the curtain, and feel that the daylight is a little more aggressive than it should be. This has happened more times than you can count. You rub your eyes, blink a few times, drink your coffee, and go on with life. But this discomfort with the light is not tiredness. It is not the age coming. It is not the new lamp that your child installed in the kitchen. This discomfort with light is your brain screaming something that your eyes can't yet see. It's the first sign that something is changing deep in your eye, in a tiny region that decides everything you see, and almost no one pays attention to this detail. You've spent years putting eye drops, changing glasses, increasing the font size of your cell phone, and the problem has continued to advance in silence. Now I'm going to explain to you exactly what's going on, why this sign appears before any exam is altered, and what you can do with information that the rush of the office rarely allows me to deliver on a platter. Think about the dimension of this. Every minute you spend without understanding this mechanism, there is a structure the size of the tip of a pencil inside your eye being overloaded. This structure is called macula. It is not just any detail. It is the center of your vision. It is what allows you to recognize your grandchild's face, to read the medicine package insert, to see if the mole is green or red. And the first sign that this structure is suffering is not a dark spot in the middle of vision. It's not the crooked image. That comes later. The first sign is the difficulty in adapting to the light. It is the feeling that the light is piercing your eyes. It's the need to lower the brightness of the cell phone to the minimum and still think it's too strong. This is called photostress. And prolonged photostress is your retina's way of warning you that your visual cells are getting fragile before they even die. But no one told you that. You thought it was normal for your age. He thought it was dryness. He thought it was the lens of the glasses dirty. And while you were thinking that, your vision's biological clock kept moving. Now I want you to hold this information for a moment, because this is just the beginning of a conversation that will change the way you look at your eyes every day. And I'm not talking about metaphor. I'm talking about pure physiology, the kind that we learn from medical books, but that we can almost never translate in a 15-minute consultation. In the next few minutes, I'm going to give you two things that will reorganize what you know about your vision. First, I'm going to show you exactly what is the silent mechanism that starts to attack your macula long before any scan shows any change. Second, I'm going to reveal to you what are the 3 daily habits that, without you knowing it, are pouring gasoline on this process while you believe you are protecting yourself. These 2 promises will be completely fulfilled by the end of this conversation. But before I open the mechanism, I need you to understand why this problem is so much bigger than it seems, and why it's growing at a rate that most people can't imagine. Observe this carefully. With each passing year after 50, the layer of cells that nourishes your macula gets thinner. This is natural, but there is a process that accelerates this thinning in a brutal way, and it does not depend only on genetics. It depends on choices you make today, right now, maybe while eating your breakfast, while preparing your lunch, while exposing yourself to light without proper protection. There is a molecule inside your eye that acts as a natural shield. This molecule is concentrated precisely in the macula, and its color is yellowish. It absorbs the high-energy blue light that enters the pupil and prevents this light from attacking the most sensitive cells. But this molecule is not manufactured by your body. It comes from outside. It comes from what you eat. And most people over 50 years old have very low levels of this molecule without knowing it. When this protection decreases, blue light begins to reach the retina as if it were fine sandpaper, day after day. The result is slow, cumulative oxidative stress that wears down the macula without making noise. The first visible symptom is exactly photostress, the difficulty of adapting to the brightness. But people don't associate one thing with the other. They put on any sunglasses, those of street vendors, which do not have an adequate filter and think they are protected, and the damage continues. My friends, those who are watching now, need to understand one thing. The human eye was not designed for the kind of light we face today. Our ancestors lived in the sunlight and the darkness of the night. The eye had time to recover. Today we live surrounded by screens, LED lamps, white and bluish artificial light everywhere. The pupil of a 60-year-old no longer closes as fast as that of a 20-year-old. This means that more light enters, and if the internal protection is low, This light hits the macula with full force. The result is that, little by little, the photoreceptor cells lose their ability to regenerate. And here comes the second symptom, the one that also appears before the dark spot. Loss of contrast sensitivity. You don't realize that you're losing the central vision. What you notice is that it is more difficult to drive at night, that the letters in the newspaper look half erased even with the new glasses, that people's faces look less sharp, as if in a light haze. This is not fatigue. This is the stain asking for help. Here's what almost no one explains. The stain does not hurt. She does not bleed visibly. It does not swell like a joint. It fades away in silence, and the initial symptoms are so subtle that the brain tries to compensate. The brain uses the other eye, uses peripheral vision, uses visual memory. That's why many people only discover the problem when there is already a significant loss. Because the brain hides the defect, it fills in the gap. And the routine consultation, the 15-minute one, can often only assess visual acuity, the famous table of letters. But the table does not measure photostress. It does not measure contrast sensitivity. It does not measure the level of that protective molecule in the macula. Then the patient leaves the office with the updated prescription for the glasses and the false feeling that everything is fine. Meanwhile, the process continues deep inside, silent, relentless. I remember a patient, Mrs. Lords, 68 years old. She arrived at the office saying that she was afraid she was going blind. But previous tests showed a vision considered normal for his age. She had 20% loss of contrast sensitivity, and no one had measured that. She said that 2 years ago, she could no longer read the bus sign from a distance that she read before. He thought it was myopia increasing. But it wasn't. It was the stain beginning to suffer. And her initial trigger, guess what it was? The difficulty with clarity. She could no longer bear to go out in the sun without closing her eyes. I thought it was migraine. It was photostress. And no one had connected the dots. When we measured the optical density of that protective pigment of the macula, it was much lower than expected. From there, we were able to draw up a plan that involved adjustments in food, light protection, and some nocturnal habits that were the real villains of her story. But the central point is that she spent 2 years thinking it was freshness, that it was trickery, that it was normal for her age. And it wasn't. Pay attention to this detail. There is an enzyme inside your cells that works as a cleaning system. It collects cellular debris, oxidized proteins, free radicals that accumulate during the day. This enzyme is part of a system that medicine calls the ubiquitin proteasome system. The name is complicated, but the concept is simple. It's your in-house cleaner. But this enzyme has a rhythm. She works mostly at night during deep sleep. When you sleep poorly, when you wake up several times, when you sleep late and wake up early, this enzyme cannot do the complete cleaning. And the cells of the retina, especially those of the macula, which have a very intense metabolic activity, accumulate toxic waste. This toxic waste intoxicates neighboring cells. It inflames the tissue. It creates an environment hostile to the survival of the photoreceptors. And then the blue light, which would already be a challenge, finds a fragile retina full of residues without the ability to defend itself. It's like throwing sand in an open wound. The damage multiplies. That changes everything. Because now you understand that it is not enough to protect the eye from the outside. It is necessary to strengthen the eye from within. And this is where the first cycle of revelations that I promised comes in. The first big revelation is about a compound that is present in very common foods, but that most people consume in the wrong way in the wrong amount, and often destroy the compound before it even reaches the eye. I'm talking about lutein. Lutein is that yellowish pigment that accumulates in the macula and works as a natural sunscreen. It absorbs blue light, neutralizes free radicals, and stabilizes cell membranes. But lutein is not manufactured by the body. It comes exclusively from the diet. The best-known sources are kale, spinach, egg yolks, corn, pumpkin. So far, nothing new. What almost no one knows is that lutein needs fat to be absorbed. And it's not just any fat. It needs to be good quality fat. And it needs to be present in the same meal. If you eat a spinach salad with lemon and 0 olive oil, you're practically throwing the lutein away. Absorption drops by as much as 90%. That's right. Without fat, lutein passes through the intestine and goes away without ever reaching the blood. without ever reaching the stain, without ever protecting your eyes. Think of the irony of that. The person believes that he is eating well. He eats vegetables every day, and the eye remains unprotected because the vehicle is missing. The spoonful of extra virgin olive oil is missing. The avocado is missing. The oil seed is missing. And then the healthcare system spends fortunes treating advanced macular degeneration with intraocular injections, when the problem began decades earlier with a poorly assembled salad. Don't get me wrong, injections save visions, but well-done prevention could prevent many from needing them. And prevention starts with the plate, the fork, the choice of accompaniment. Lutein is also in the egg yolk, and the yolk already comes with fat, which facilitates absorption. But many elderly people avoid yolk for fear of cholesterol, without knowing that, for eye health, the yolk is one of the best sources of lutein and zeaxanthin that exist. The whole egg, consumed in moderation and within a balanced food context, can be a powerful ally for its taint. Now I want to take a quick break. It is not a break for rest. It's a pause for recognition. If you've been listening to me this far, it's because you really care about your vision. It's because you don't want to be fooled by simple answers, and I value that. So if this conversation is making sense to you, leave your like, subscribe to this channel, and please write the name of your city or country in the comments. I read the comments, and it helps me know where you guys are from. And answer me something. Have you ever felt this discomfort with the light and thought it was normal? Write it down. This will create a community of people who are really informing themselves, and the algorithm will deliver this content to more people who need it. Now I'm going to go even deeper, because lutein alone doesn't work miracles, and the mistake that nullifies its benefit is more common than you might think. There is a lutein partner who works behind the scenes, a partner that enhances her action and that is disappearing from modern food. This partner is called zeaxanthin. Zeaxanthin is another yellowish pigment that is deposited in the macula, but it occupies a strategic position. While lutein spreads more along the periphery of the macula, zeaxanthin is concentrated right in the center, in the foveola, which is the point of greatest visual acuity. That's where you see the details. It is there that the light is focused with more intensity. And zeaxanthin is the last barrier before light reaches the photoreceptors. Without zeaxanthin, protection is incomplete. And zeaxanthin is present in foods such as orange peppers, corn, egg yolks, and guava. But the amount we consume today is much smaller than what our grandparents consumed. Because the industry processed the food, refined the oils, discarded the dark peels and leaves. And the eye feels this absence. But here's the turnaround. There's no point in consuming lutein and zeaxanthin if you keep exposing your eyes to high-energy blue light without the right external protection. And it is at this point that I see the most repeated mistake in doctors' offices. People buy sunglasses thinking that any dark lens will protect them. But the dark lens with no UV filter and no blue light filter does the opposite of what you need. When you put on a dark lens, your pupil dilates. It opens wider. If the lens does not have the proper filter, even more blue light and more ultraviolet radiation enter, hitting the macula with full force. You're wearing sunglasses, feeling protected, and your gaping pupil is letting the enemy in. It's the famous cheap that is expensive. The glasses of street vendors, newsstands, without certification, are a silent danger. They block visible light, which reduces discomfort, but they do not block harmful radiation. The discomfort disappears, the pupil opens, and the damage continues. Pay attention to this detail. Ultraviolet radiation and high-energy blue light cause the formation of free radicals within retinal cells. These free radicals are unstable molecules that react with everything they encounter. They oxidize cell membranes, damage the DNA of mitochondria, and trigger an inflammatory cascade that kills cells little by little. This process is called oxidative stress. And the eye is particularly vulnerable because it is exposed to light all the time and has a very high concentration of polyunsaturated fatty acids, which are very susceptible to oxidation. It is as if the retina were a thin oil that oxidizes easily if it is not protected. Lutein and zeaxanthin are the antioxidants that stabilize this oil. But if the exposure is greater than the protection, the damage happens. Now I'm going to tell the story of Mr. Antonio, a 72-year-old man who came to me with a paralyzing fear of losing his sight. He had seen his father go blind from macular degeneration and was convinced that his fate would be the same. He was already being monitored, already taking the vitamins that the ophthalmologist recommended, but he continued to feel his vision worsen little by little. When we investigated his habits, we discovered two things. The first was that he took the vitamin supplement on an empty stomach. The second was that he spent hours on the porch reading without eye protection, because he liked natural light. The fasted supplement had reduced absorption of fat-soluble vitamins and lutein. Natural light without adequate protection was bombarding his retina every day. Two simple changes transformed the picture: to take the supplement along with a meal that contained olive oil, and start wearing glasses with a quality UV filter and blue light filter with certification. Within 3 months, his contrast sensitivity improved, and his photostress decreased. It did not reverse the damage already installed, but it did slow down progression. And this, my friends, is the most realistic thing science can offer when it comes to macular degeneration: to break, stabilize, preserve what is still intact. There is another mechanism that I need to open with you, a mechanism that connects the gut, blood, and retina, and here's what no one explains properly. The health of your retina depends directly on the health of your mitochondria. Mitochondria are the power plants of cells. Inside every cell in your retina are hundreds of mitochondria, working non-stop to convert light into electrical impulse. But this process generates waste, generates free radicals, and the retina has one of the most intense metabolisms in the human body. To handle this, mitochondria need a molecule called coenzyme Q10. Coenzyme Q10 is like a spark that ignites the boiler. Without it, the plant works poorly, generates more garbage and less energy. It turns out that the body's natural production of coenzyme Q10 drops dramatically after the age of 50, and the use of statins, those cholesterol medications, can further reduce coenzyme Q10 levels. But few people talk about it. Observe this carefully. I'm not telling anyone to suspend medication. Never do this without talking to your doctor. I'm saying that there is a biochemical connection between the drop in coenzyme Q10 and the fragility of retinal cells, and that supplementation, in many cases, can be an important complement. Coenzyme Q10 exists in two forms: ubiquinone, which is the oxidized form and most common in cheap supplements, and ubiquinol, which is the reduced, active, and much more absorbable form. After the age of 50, the body has difficulty converting ubiquinone into ubiquinol. So, if you take the wrong supplement, you may be throwing money away. The active form, ubiquinol, is more expensive, but it's the one that actually gets to the mitochondria and makes a difference. This is another example of how the common mistake cancels the benefit. The person buys coenzyme Q10 thinking he is protecting the heart and eyes, but he is buying the form that the body can no longer use properly, and the mitochondrial damage continues. Here's the connection to real life. When the mitochondria of the retina begin to fail, the first sign is visual fatigue. You read a little and your eyes get tired. You watch television and the images seem to lose focus. You go to the market and the shelves look like a haze of colors. This is not laziness. It's not a lack of new glasses. It's the power plant of your eyes asking for fuel. And the right fuel can come from foods like lean red meats, chicken, fish, broccoli, cauliflower, and peanuts, which contain the precursors to coenzyme Q10. But the amount obtained by the diet is small. That's why many people benefit from targeted supplementation. And here's a detail that anchors this information in your memory. Coenzyme Q10 needs vitamin C to regenerate. Without vitamin C, coenzyme Q10 oxidizes and loses its function. Vitamin C is like the mechanic who fixes the spark. And vitamin C is in citrus fruits, acerola, camu camu, red peppers. What happens is that many elderly people avoid acidic fruits because of gastritis and end up eating less vitamin C than they need. This weakens the regeneration of coenzyme Q10. And the retina feels it. I remember a patient, Mr. Francisco, 65 years old. He complained of extreme eye strain. He worked with accounting, spent hours in front of the computer. He was taking a generic coenzyme Q10 supplement, one of those on the supermarket shelf, and he didn't feel any difference. When we adjusted the form for ubiquinol and advised him to drink it with a glass of natural orange juice in the morning, in 2 weeks he reported that his eyes were more rested. He said he could work until the end of the day without that feeling of sand in his eyes. It was not a miracle. It was biochemistry. It was delivering to the body what it asked for, in the form it could use. And this is the kind of thing that often does not fit in a routine consultation. But it fits here. It fits into this conversation that goes straight to the point. Now I'm going to open a new cycle of revelation. And this one is particularly surprising. There is a hormone that most people associate only with sleep, but which has a direct effect on the pressure inside the eye and on the protection of the retina. This hormone is called melatonin. Melatonin is produced by the pineal gland during the night in the dark, but the retina also produces melatonin, and ocular melatonin is a very potent antioxidant which acts locally to protect cells from damage caused by light. When you expose yourself to artificial light at night, especially blue light from screens and LED bulbs, melatonin production drops. Melatonin drops in the brain, which impairs sleep, and melatonin in the retina drops, which impairs local protection. The result is twofold. You sleep worse, which gets in the way of the cleaning done by the ubiquitin proteasome system that I mentioned earlier. And you unprotect the retina during the night, which is the time when it should be regenerating. That changes everything, because now you understand that the habit of watching television until late, of checking your cell phone before bed, of leaving the hallway light on, does not only disturb sleep, it directly disrupts the survival of your macula cells. Blue light at night suppresses melatonin and leaves your retina vulnerable. And the common mistake that cancels the benefit is the following. Many people put a blue light filter on their cell phone, but leave the screen brightness at maximum and watch at a very short distance. The filter reduces a portion of the blue light, but the full intensity of the light and the proximity of the screen continue to stimulate the pupil and suppress melatonin. The ideal is to reduce the brightness, increase the distance, and if possible, stop using screens at least 60 to 90 minutes before bedtime. For those who cannot go without reading at night, an alternative is to use a digital reader with electronic ink technology, which does not emit light, or return to the old paper book with an indirect yellow light, which interferes less with the production of melatonin. The connection to real life is immediate. How many times have you gone to sleep with the feeling that your eyes were too tired? How many times have you woken up with blurry vision that only improved after blinking a lot? This is the retina asking for a truce. It is suppressed melatonin. It is the accumulation of free radicals that have not been neutralized. And the damage, week after week, is piling up. It's not a matter of a day. It's a matter of months and years of bad nighttime habits. And the good news is that melatonin can be replenished. There are extended-release melatonin supplements that mimic natural production. But here's what almost no one explains. Supplemented melatonin isn't just for sleep. It also acts as a systemic and ocular antioxidant. But the dose matters. Doses that are too high can cause residual drowsiness and disrupt the natural rhythm. Very low doses may have no antioxidant effect. The dose that has been associated with eye benefits is usually between 1 and 3 milligrams, taken 1 hour before bedtime, always with medical advice. And once again, there is the error that cancels. Taking melatonin and remaining exposed to blue light is like filling a leaky swimming pool. You're trying to replace what you're destroying at the same time. The dark environment is part of the treatment. Now I want to talk about a nutrient that is little talked about outside of specialized circles, but which has an extraordinary role in retinal health. I'm referring to omega-3s, specifically DHA, docosahexaenoic acid. This is a fatty acid that makes up a significant part of the membranes of photoreceptor cells. DHA gives fluidity to the membrane, allows visual signals to be transmitted with speed and precision. Without enough DHA, the membrane becomes rigid, nerve impulse transmission slows down, and the cell becomes more susceptible to oxidation. The human body does not produce enough DHA. It needs to come from food. The main sources are cold water and deep water fish, such as wild salmon, sardines, herring, tuna, and mackerel. But most people consume much less than necessary. And the common mistake that nullifies the benefit is to consume farmed fish, thinking that it has the same DHA content as wild fish. The farmed fish is fed feed, which has a completely different fat profile. It has less DHA and more inflammatory omega-6. You think you're eating something healthy, but you're eating fat that, in excess, can increase inflammation in the body and retina. Another common mistake is to buy omega-3 supplements that are oxidized. Omega-3 is a polyunsaturated fat, very susceptible to oxidation. If the supplement has been poorly stored, if it has been exposed to heat or light, it oxidizes. And oxidized omega-3, instead of protecting, harms. It increases oxidative stress. It inflames. He does the opposite of what he should do. How do you know if your omega-3 is oxidized? There are simple home tests. Cut the capsule and smell. If it smells like rotten fish, rancid, it's oxidized. If it smells like fresh sea, clean fish, it's good. Another tip is to store omega-3s in the refrigerator, even if the label doesn't require it. Cold slows down oxidation. And of course, choose brands that have purity and low oxidation certification. This simple care can be the difference between protecting your macula and intoxicating your cells. Now I'm going to connect several dots. We talk about lutein and zeaxanthin, which are the internal sunscreens. We are talking about coenzyme Q10, which is the spark of mitochondria. We are talking about melatonin, which is the nocturnal antioxidant. We are talking about DHA, which is the brick of membranes. These four elements do not act in isolation. They form an integrated retinal defense system. If one of them fails, the others are overwhelmed. If lutein is low, blue light generates more free radicals, which consume more coenzyme Q10 and more melatonin, and oxidize more DHA. It's a domino effect. And here comes the most insidious factor of all, the factor that many consider healthy, but that, in excess, sabotages this entire system. Sugar. Sugar, my friends, is the great silent saboteur of vision. And I'm not just talking about those who have diabetes. I'm talking about anyone who has frequent glucose spikes. When glucose rises in the blood, it binds to proteins in a process called glycation. This binding forms products that intoxicate cells, stiffen blood vessels, and inflame tissues. In the retina, glycation damages capillaries, reduces macular irrigation, and accelerates cell death. But this process happens in slow motion. It doesn't hurt. It gives no immediate signal. But, over time, it narrows the vessels, reduces the supply of oxygen and nutrients. And the retina, which is already the most oxygen-intensive tissue in the body, begins to suffocate. The association between glucose spikes and macular degeneration is so strong that many researchers already call macular degeneration diabetes of the eye, even in people who don't have diagnosed diabetes. Here's what almost no one explains. You can eat a fruit thinking it's healthy, and it really is, but if you consume it on its own, on an empty stomach, in the form of juice, you cause a glucose spike. The whole fruit, with fiber chewed, has a much lower glycemic impact than juice. Orange juice, for example, loses fiber, concentrates fructose, and is absorbed quickly, raising glucose. If you drink this juice on an empty stomach, the peak is even higher. And that peak, repeated every day, glycates retinal proteins. It stiffens the vases. It will silently sabotage the defense system you are trying to build with lutein, omega-3s, and all the other nutrients. Fruit is welcome. Fasting juice is the mistake that cancels out. The same logic applies to refined carbohydrates. White bread, white rice, cream cracker biscuit, refined flour pasta. All of this turns into glucose quickly, and the body responds with insulin. High insulin, in turn, is associated with chronic low-grade inflammation. And this inflammation reaches the retina. It reaches the macula. It reaches the endothelium of the vessels. So when I see a patient with macular degeneration who eats French bread for breakfast and white rice for lunch, I already know that part of the treatment needs to include replacing it with whole, fiber-rich versions that slow down glucose absorption. Fiber is the great forgotten ally. It lowers the glycemic index of the meal, feeds the good bacteria in the gut, and modulates inflammation. And here I open another fundamental connection. The gut and retina are linked by an axis that science is beginning to unravel in more depth. The bacteria that live in your gut produce substances that fall into the bloodstream and end up in all tissues, including the retina. One of these substances is called butyrate. Butyrate is a short-chain fatty acid produced by the fermentation of soluble fibers. It has anti-inflammatory properties and is able to cross the blood-retinal barrier and exert a protective effect on the cells of the macula. When the gut flora is unbalanced, with an excess of inflammatory bacteria and a lack of butyrate-producing bacteria, the retina loses this shield. And what unbalances the flora? Low-fiber diet, excess sugar, excess inflammatory fats, frequent use of antibiotics without probiotic replacement, chronic stress, and poor sleep. Everything connects. I had a patient, Mrs. Marta, 59 years old. She came with complaints of blurry, fluctuating vision and photostress. The tests showed the beginning of dry macular degeneration. She ate well, according to her. But when we detailed the diet, we found that she drank orange juice on an empty stomach every day, ate French bread with margarine, and for lunch, white rice with beans and lean meat. Almost zero soluble fiber, zero green leaves, zero fish. And she was still taking a lutein supplement that, without fat in the meal, had minimal absorption. We adjusted the diet. Spinach sautéed with olive oil, whole boiled egg, fresh sardines, whole fruits with skin, oats in thick flakes. Within 6 weeks, her contrast sensitivity improved. She reported that the sunlight no longer bothered her as before, and the optical density examination of the macula showed an increase in the protective pigment. We have not reversed the degeneration, but we have created an environment hostile to progression, and this, for those who understand the seriousness of the disease, is a huge victory. Now I want to get to the climax of that conversation, the most surprising revelation, the one that connects everything I've said so far in a mechanism that is very little commented on, but which has a brutal impact on eye health after the age of 50. I'm talking about the lymphatic system of the brain and the eye. The brain does not have conventional lymphatic vessels. For a long time, it was believed that he had no lymphatic system at all. But science has discovered that there is a system that works during deep sleep, which uses the spaces between cells to drain toxic waste. This system is known as the glymphatic system, and it drains not only the brain, but also the optic nerve and the retina. During deep sleep, glial cells contract, opening channels through which fluid circulates and carries toxins out. This is the great night cleaning. But this cleaning depends on one thing: position. Sleeping on your side, especially on your right side, seems to facilitate glymphatic drainage. Sleeping on your back can reduce efficiency. And sleeping with your head too low, without a suitable pillow, can hinder venous return and drainage. Here's what that means in practice. If you sleep poorly, if you wake up often, if you have undiagnosed sleep apnea, if you sleep with the television on, the light on, your cell phone vibrating, your glymphatic system does not work properly. Toxins accumulate. Among these toxins are oxidized proteins, free radicals, and advanced glycation products. And all of this is deposited in the retina, in the macula, creating a chronic inflammatory environment. The high-energy blue light the next day finds an already intoxicated retina, and the damage multiplies. The heaviest revelation is this: the quality of your sleep today determines the quality of your vision tomorrow. And this is not a catchphrase. It's physiology. It is the glymphatic system that needs darkness, silence, and adequate position to clean. Without this, there is no supplement that can handle it. There is no lutein that protects. There is no omega-3 that you can notice. And there is a silent traitor in this story: the consumption of alcoholic beverages at night. Many people believe that a glass of wine helps them sleep. And indeed, alcohol induces initial sleep, but it fragments deep sleep. It suppresses REM sleep. It dehydrates the body. And above all, it inhibits glymphatic drainage. Studies show that even moderate doses of alcohol before bed significantly reduce brain and eye clearing during the night. The person sleeps, but does not rest, and the retina is not clean. The toxins remain. The damage stacks. So, that habit that seems harmless, that is almost cultural in some families, is silently sabotaging the health of your eyes. I'm not saying you can never have a glass of wine again. I'm saying that if you have risk factors for macular degeneration, if you already feel photostress, if you have a family history, nighttime alcohol can be one of the biggest enemies of your vision. Now, I want to speak directly to you who are listening to me. With you who recognized any of these situations in your life. You thought that the difficulty with the light was freshness. You who changed glasses several times and kept feeling that something wasn't right. You who are afraid of not being able to read the recipe for the cake your granddaughter asks for. You look in the mirror and wonder how long you will be able to see yourself clearly. I want you to understand one thing. Macular degeneration is not a sentence. It is a process. And processes can be slowed down. They can be modulated. They can be faced with quality information, with conscious choices, and with the partnership of a doctor who looks at you as a whole, not just as a pair of eyes. Science has already shown the way. There are real, measured, proven mechanisms that explain how to protect the macula. There are nutrients that the retina needs that most people don't consume in the right form. There are nocturnal habits that activate glymphatic cleaning and that are free. There are modern pitfalls, such as blue light and hidden sugar, that can be counteracted with small changes. What is missing is someone who connects these dots in clear language. That's what I tried to do here. No rush, no shortcuts, without overly complicated terms. Speaking on an equal footing, like a doctor who sits in front of you and finally has time to explain what really matters. I promise no cure. No serious doctor would do that. Evidence indicates that the combination of external light protection with certified glasses, increased intake of lutein and zeaxanthin with healthy fat sources, adequate consumption of DHA, maintenance of coenzyme Q10 levels in active form, respect for the melatonin cycle with dark nights, control of glucose peaks, and care for intestinal health can create an internal environment hostile to the advance of degeneration. Study participants reported improved contrast sensitivity and reduced photostress. It's not a miracle. It is mechanism. It is giving the body the tools it needs. This content is educational. It complements, but does not replace, medical follow-up. Take this information to your eye doctor. Ask about the optical density of macular pigment. Ask about contrast sensitivity. Ask about the quality of your sleep and the health of your retina. You have the right to be evaluated in full. And you have the right to understand what's going on with your body. No 15-minute consultation can exhaust a subject like this. But this conversation may have planted a seed. Now I want you to do something. Share this audio with someone you love. Someone you know is afraid of losing their sight. Someone who keeps bumping into furniture and says it was unintentional. Someone who has increased the font size of his cell phone and still frowns to read. Sharing this information is not just any gesture. It is an act of care. It's like offering a hug in the form of knowledge. It is to tell this person that he is not alone, that there is an explanation, that there is a way, and that the first sign, that discomfort with the light, is not freshness. It's the body talking. It's the eye asking for help. And now you know what to do with it.